G'day folks and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Oliver Brandt and in this episode I'm joined by Angelo Valdivia,
Hey, paisanos.
Michael Goncalves,
Hey, team.
and Luke Henderson.
Hello there.
We've got a great episode lined up for you, all about a new Tony Hawk game, a wonderful Aussie indie game, more eShop shenanigans, and more Nintendo Switch retrospective. But first, let's talk about Pokemon. The Pokemon Day Pokemon Presents presentation, what a fucking mouthful, happened just after we recorded the last episode, and announced two new games. Well, one new game, and gave us details about a game that was announced with no details a year ago. So we'll talk about Pokemon Legends ZA first. It is the first actual details that we got for Pokemon Legends ZA, coming in late 2025, and it is set entirely within Lumia City, which was the main city in Pokemon X and Y. There's like wild zones that Pokemon can live in, but they also like kind of hang out in the rest of the city as well. For the first time ever, though, the battles in the game are real-time combat. So it's not like, a turn-based thing. It's not even like an expanded turn-based thing like we saw with Pokemon Legends Arceus. It is proper real-time, kind of similar to Xenoblade Chronicles. So you can kind of control where your Pokemon are and when they attack. There's like cooldowns on their attacks, and there's also like some positioning stuff, and some attacks are AoE, and some are you have to like time protect in order for it to be effective, so you can't just like use protect and then your next attack is totally safe. So yeah, it is definitely a big change for the series. It's worth noting that the Pokemon Legends sub-series is basically just a place for experimental gameplay stuff to happen. We saw it with Pokemon Legends Arceus, and we're seeing it with Pokemon Legends ZA now. It looks fine. I think the YouTube feed was not particularly great for it. The compression really kind of made it look like arse. And it does look like arse regardless, but it looks less like arse than any other Pokemon game on Switch. So,
I mean, compared to Scarlet and Violet, it looks phenomenal.
oh yeah, it's like night and day. Some of the direct feed screenshots, they look quite nice. There's still some muddy textures and things that don't look super great, but I think for the most part, it's a fairly decent looking game. For the first time in a really long time.
There's a 100% chance that there's a Switch 2 version of this, right?
I would be very surprised if there wasn't a Switch 2 version. I don't think there'll be like Switch 2 versions on shelves, right? I think it'll be like, oh, here's the Switch version, but it's enhanced on Switch 2, Like they're not gonna, I don't know.
Not going to charge people twice for it?
No, I don't think that they're going to do a separate SKU for it. Like, it just doesn't have one.
I think it'll be more like the Breath of the Wild. I think there'll be a version for Switch and a version for Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Because like we've got this whole backwards compatibility thing where it's like it makes more sense to just like have one version on shelves and then like cut down on confusion and not.
So you're talking the Xbox route where you buy an Xbox One game, but it's also branded Xbox Series X on the case.
Yeah, I think it'll be like Switch, and then there'll be like a banner that says like enhanced for Switch 2 or whatever, right? Like there'll be like a patch or whatever that you can download that will make it run better on Switch 2.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, I don't know. It looks like it could be really interesting and fun. But it's one of those things where it's like, this is such a big change that like, who knows if it's gonna work. Right, because like with Pokemon Legends Arceus, the battle system was like different, but it was also something that has been done before. Like it's basically an expanded version of the old battle system. This is a whole new thing. So it'd be interesting to see if it lands.
My biggest concern for this one, because again, I'm not on the Pokemon wagon anymore because I'm sick and tired of being handheld as I try and play these games. Is like the whole idea of it being set within one single city. I get from a design point of view why they would want to do that, but at the same time, it's like I would hope there's times where you do leave the city, because it would be really weird to just be locked into one place for a Pokemon game, given that no other Pokemon game in history has ever done that.
Yeah, but again, this is like the more experimental sub-series, so like it makes sense that they could try. Like, I think if nothing else, like this is at least evidence of Game Freak like setting some set of amount of scope for themselves, rather than doing what they did with Scarlet and Violet and just letting the scope balloon out and do a shit job of all of it. Like setting it all within one city. Yes, it is likely to feel a bit samey and a little bit restricted, but I think like there's only so much that you can do with that, right? Like you can't expand out and be like, we'll add these new features or these new areas or whatever, right? It's like it
The
still
thing that
has
really
to
sort
fit
of
somehow.
got me was the wild zones, because in the trailer, one of the wild zones is literally just a street with like a cafe on one side and a parked car, and it's like I don't know anyone would consider that to be a suitable place for animals to live. Like if I went down in Melbourne and I walked down Burke Street Mall and all of a sudden I entered a wild zone and Maya was on one side of me and there was just, Pokemon around, obviously I'd be weirded out, but it's like that wouldn't feel like appropriate. Like if I went to a giant park and that was a wild zone, then sure, that would make sense.
That's because in Melbourne, a wild zone is when you walk down Birch Street and there are a pack of teenagers sniffing nangs. That's why.
That's true. It's a wild zone on its own. I don't know. I just feel like it'd be different instead of having Fifth Avenue in New York, having the wild zone be Central Park. And I don't get that from this trailer. I get it. It's like they've just like cordoned off sections of streets and called it a day. So that's why I'm hoping there's more outside of the city. But we'll see.
I mean, if you look at the map, there are like some park style sections. Like there's a big like fountainy area in the middle, and then in the top right there's like greenery and shit. So
yeah, but there's greenery in on my major street in my town, but it's all of 5 meters across. I wouldn't call that a park. So
yeah, but it's also not legal for you to make animals fight each other, Luke. This is a video game.
I will say, as someone who like hasn't given a shit about Pokemon since Pokemon Yellow, it's nice they're trying something different. Like, hats off to them. Like, change it up.
But yeah, like weirdly, you can also you can catch Pokemon outside of wild zones as well. We've seen a couple clips of like Pokemon being caught and battled outside of those wild zones. So I don't really know why the wild zones exist exactly, but I mean, hey, it's Pokemon. They're gonna do what they want to do. But yeah, I mean, it looks interesting. I think the character design is fantastic. But Pokemon has always kind of had really good character design. I do like that the main protagonists look like they're from the early fucking 2000s. Like, that's great. I love the outfits.
Oh, with the girl version with the big flared jeans at the bottom.
Man.
I've got it on the video for anyone watching it there.
Some of this texture work is fucking wild.
I don't like their hats.
Look at the
I think the
screenshot with Charizard. That building is just a fucking cube.
There's no depth to it.
It's so awful.
Yeah.
Man, okay.
I mean, we say this for every Pokemon game. It's still early. They do occasionally polish things up, so who knows? But it's like, yeah. I will say I'm happy to see that they're mixing generations of Pokemon, because I think that threw people off too with I think Gen 2 and a Gen 5 for the starters. So
I think also so much of Game Freak's not excuse. I don't think they're making excuses, but a lot of people make excuses for them. Is that they're always working with underpowered quote unquote hardware. So I'm intrigued to see with Switch 2, and if it is the rumors are correct and it has a PS4-ish level of performance, what they do then. Because we've seen what people have done with a PS4 and it's wild. Some of the things they did on PS4 were nuts. So
I think it's one of those scenarios, right, where we know that like Game Freak's tech stack for Pokemon is like bad. It's got a lot of technical debt, and the more they add on to it, like the worse it seems to get.
Yeah, it's like Nintendo Network level of bad.
Yeah, but like it's also one of those situations where like just raw power is going to let you brute force some of the issues inherent with the engine, and like if they keep things similarly scoped, but like have that extra power to work with and improve the textures and stuff, like I don't think there's like anything like in terms of scope that like needs to be expanded from like something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, like a big open world, like that's fine. I don't think they need to go bigger or taller or whatever.
If you look at like open world stuff on PS4, right? Like Horizon existed on PS4. Like if there was like a Horizon level game that was like Pokemon, like holy shit.
Yeah.
That'd be
God of War.
God of War? Yeah, God of War's a little bit less open worldy, but yes, I agree. Same. God of War looks incredible.
Even when people give games, oh, you know, it's on Switch, it's like, yeah, so Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, yeah, it wasn't filled with animals everywhere, but it's like, scale that world down by 50%, fill it with animals. You still got a fantastic looking game.
It's like it's 100% just like different tech, different teams, right? Because you look at something like Mario Odyssey and what's the open world Kirby game? I keep forgetting what's called.
Forgotten Land.
Yeah. And you look at like the different tech in that, right? In Forgotten Land, you can't look more than 5 meters in front of Kirby before the animation frame rate for every character is like 2 FPS. But like in Mario Odyssey, like it's basically like infinite distance, and everyone's like animations look fucking incredible. You can see like Goombas from like 4 kilometers away. It's just different teams, different tech have different solutions, but the chasm in difference is wild on Switch. Like it's really, really crazy.
Yeah. I think like ultimately like something like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild like benefits a lot from shifting a lot of the stuff into the art style, right? Is it like whereas like Pokemon relies heavily on textures, like Tears of the Kingdom and you know Breath of the Wild and a few other games as well, like kind of rely more on like, you know, not cell shading but similar techniques where like a lot of the heavy lifting is done by like effects rather than textures. Whereas like Pokemon obviously like with the models at least need to be very well textured. Which
also a lot of the world in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is barren as fuck. Like, it's just the huge sweats of like emptiness.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I saw people comparing this to Tears of the Kingdom, and I was like, okay, but like I can load up a screenshot of Tears of the Kingdom. If I just type Tears of the Kingdom into Google Images, like 70% of the screenshots there are just like empty, like wastelands.
Open
like it's
fields,
just a
large trees,
a large piece of a large field. Whereas like Pokemon kind of necessarily needs to be a bit more populated. So, yeah, and yeah, as I said, they've got a huge amount of technical debt. They need to do something with their engine to make it more streamlined, or just switch over to Nintendo's Lunch Pack engine, because that is, you know, a lot more capable and a lot more flexible than the engine that Pokemon has been working with. And it is worth noting that like Game Freak does have experience in other engines. They have experience working with Unity, and they have experience working with Unreal Engine because they're working on a game. Well, they were. I don't know if they still are.
Still they were technically in development, but who knows who the publisher will be.
Yeah, they were working with a game with who was it, like Deep Silver?
Private Division.
That was in Unreal Engine 5. So who knows? I don't know. We've seen that like it is possible to port the battle system and shit over to other engines.
Well, the big thing is that last year they announced a collaboration, and I can't think of the other company's name, but they came together to create Pokemon Works, and that's who's developing the next game. No, it wasn't Ilka. It was another company.
Yeah, no, Pokemon Works is between Game Freak and Ilka. And that is who is working on the next game that we'll talk about in a second.
So I'm literally going to look it up now, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't Ilka.
No, it's 100% Ilka. Pokemon Works is Ilka and Game Freak / Pokemon Company.
I just want to point out that news is supposed to be 25 minutes, and we spent 15 minutes talking about a game most of us aren't excited about.
Yeah. I
it
mean,
is Ilka.
that's,
Maybe
Angelo,
maybe-
why are you surprised by this?
I'm not surprised. I'm just pointing it out.
But yeah, the fact that okay, it is Ilka. I apologize. I was wrong. But the fact that they won't be using the same Pokemon tech for their new game. They'll use their own thing or something else. But yeah, I honestly, again, for Game Freak, I'm done giving them a break because they've always had a reason why their games look shit, and it's always once is fine, twice okay. By the third time, it's like, okay, it's not the hardware, it's you guys. You guys are the ones causing this. You guys are the ones that need to fix it. And I don't think they're doing it visually with this one. I think they're still having the same problems. But again, we'll see. We'll
but
see
as you
what
said,
the game
it
comes
is, not early development. It is still in development, and there's still 9 months before we're likely to see it. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over time. Because I suspect that this is, if they hadn't taken extra time, the game that we saw in that trailer was the game that probably would have released in November last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The other Pokemon game that was announced is Pokemon Champions, which is a battle simulator. It's kind of like Pokemon Stadium 3. It's an online battle simulator that uses the battle system from the main series games, 2v2 format. And it is coming to Switch and mobile, interestingly. You will be able to battle without connecting into anything, but you can connect it to Pokemon Home to use your own Pokemon. They didn't show any actual gameplay for the thing, but we kind of know that it's just going to be like the competitive battle side of Pokemon. And we know that they're going to be able to mix and match gimmicks, like battle gimmicks, like Terrestrialization and Mega Evolution. So should be really interesting. I think they're likely going to move the competitive side of Pokemon entirely to this, which should expand it to more players and give them more free reign to do stuff in the main series games that they wouldn't do otherwise if they had to continue with
Sorry, I'm just watching the trailer, which has all these people playing Pokemon on the various handhelds and consoles over the years. And the last shot before they show gameplay is a girl sitting on a giant ball, at the edge of a park or something. She's got a mobile phone in her head, but her headphones are around her neck, and she's smiling. It's like, what are you smiling at? You can't hear anything. Your headphones aren't on.
Smiling because she just got a sick win in Pokemon.
Maybe.
So this is likely to just move the competitive side of things over to this instead of the main series, which I think is a really good move that should help competitive thrive. Because I feel like Pokemon for a while has just been just on the edge of proper esports status, and this should just push it over the line, I think. If anyone has any
I want
thoughts
to
about
see.
this.
I want to see gameplay. I just want to see if it's actually going to be fun. Because if it's just like Pokemon Stadium was, where it's just literal same crappy moves, but with fancy graphics, it's like I'm not for that.
That's what it's going to be.
No, well, see,
No.
the thing
When I
about
say
Po-
moves,
the thing about Pokemon Stadium was that Pokemon, it was that. You saw, just kind of very basic animations and stuff. But the cool thing about Pokemon was that you spent 2 years playing the Game Boy games, and then you finally brought them into 3D, and it's the exact same party that you had, right? It's the Game Boy game that you own, and then you can upload your party to Stadium, and then you can battle it out with your friends. But there were also mini games, and there were all sorts of other little things in there. Plus, you could then play your Game Boy game on the system. Since then, any other Stadium-like game has just been the same thing, but taking away features from the game. It's nowhere near as feature rich as the original Pokemon Stadium was. I'm watching this trailer, and I'm sitting here looking at this thinking, who is this trailer for? Who are they trying to hype up? Because the kids that are at the beginning of the trailer where they're sitting there playing Game Boys, they are not the kids of today. And back in 1998, those kids have probably moved on and have their own children and probably aren't playing Pokemon anymore. Because I can't,
or
in my
working
circles
on a
at least,
Nintendo podcast.
well, you guys are the only guys at my age that I know, and minus 2 other friends that I have who really play Pokemon. Well, not even everyone here even plays Pokemon, but even just talks about Pokemon. And I'm looking at this thinking, who is this for? Who's getting excited about this? And I'm watching the actual animation, the production of the trailer. I'm like, this trailer looks insane. It looks cool. this is not the gameplay of the trailer. None of this is happening whatsoever.
Do you know
all
what
the gameplay that they
confirms
show
that?
here is they've got two Pokemon on either side of the screen and they're just like shooting effects at each other. I'm like, this is what everyone's getting excited about in this damn trailer? I don't understand this thing at all.
Do you know what confirms that? There's that moment at the end where that guy gets transported into the game, and there's obviously two Pokemon. There's two trainers and the two Pokemon beside them in the stadium. And at the very bottom, it says, not representative of gameplay experience. I'm like, yeah, no shit, Nintendo.
Yeah, I'm like, what is exciting about this trailer? What is it supposed to be trying to hype up? What, that I can just play the exact same game that I have since I was a child, but now on my phone?
I just
But
like,
yeah,
for
'cause
me,
it's about competitive play. It's the exact same reason people get
Like
excited
every other video game, Ollie? Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But like here's the thing, right? It's always been tied
no,
to
I
the
poked the
console.
bear.
And it's always been tied to
Like-
the console. It's always been tied to the release of a new main series game, right? So like there's very little incentive right now to get into the esports side of Pokemon because you are stuck with the same group of Pokemon for 3, 4, 5 years because of how long it takes for a new generation to come out. And with more experimental games like Pokemon Legends, that rift becomes larger. With this, it's a more flexible, more quickly evolving competitive scene.
This is essentially just Warzone to Call of Duty multiplayer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the war zone of Pokemon multiplayer.
Sure,
this is
okay,
Pokemon
make that
Warzone.
comparison.
The thing I get from this trailer is that one, everyone who plays Pokemon sweats profusely for some reason,
Yes, no joke.
which is really weird. Two is that it's going to be on mobile, and I feel like it's just going to be a microtransaction hell, and I can't wait to see what this is going to be like.
Yeah, so on that front, there's a couple of different routes that they could go. They could just rely on the monetization from home, because there will be a lot of players who want to connect their games to home and then be able to use nicknames and shiny Pokemon and all of that stuff. Otherwise, I think it would just be like outfits and shit for your trainer. I don't really think there's going to be much more beyond that.
I long for the time when we see some kid comes in with their Pidgey and their Rattata and whatever Gen 1 Pokemon exists from the newer games, because I don't give a shit about them. It comes in and then some whale player rocks in with his level 80 shiny Charizard and just demolishes the kid. Because you know
You'd be
what's gonna happen, it's
surprised.
gonna
There
be
are some
hilarious.
kids that are like just fucking wild at Pokemon.
It's just bizarre to me because again, I'm looking at this
Kids
trailer
getting-
and they do this huge thing where like this woman was playing on her phone and then they show it beam from her phone to a satellite, then to some dude on
love
his
that.
Switch. I'm like,
I was like-
oh, so they invented internet gameplay now. We haven't been doing this since the Nintendo DS. All
I don't know,
right,
'cause
sure.
it's just so beautifully Nintendo out of touch with how networking works, and I'm like,
No joke.
amazing.
I just, everything
yeah, I don't know, I
about
feel
this
like-
is just so cringy to me.
Children getting stomped by sweaty like 50-year-olds like dudes at tournaments is like the classic experience, and I hope it continues forever.
I mean, if that happens to this game, like I think that makes like Pokemon more of a legitimate esport than any other than it has been in the past.
Oh my
'Cause it is, like,
God.
No joke, like that is the esports experience. You're like, you're a
Ugh.
10-year-old like jumping into competitive play and you get fucking stomped by a 50-year-old dude who has like spent $3,000 on the perfect build. Like,
Ollie, I wish I could convince myself to be as excited about anything in the world as you are about this game.
anyway, enough about Pokemon. Let's talk about Tony Hawk. So
Yeah, boy, a man's game. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we kind of knew this was coming. It had been leaked like 1 trillion times, and like skaters just straight up saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be in a new Tony Hawk game." But yeah, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 is coming to Switch and everything else. It's coming to Switch on day one compared to the first game, which came to Switch 11 months later. The career mode from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 has been replaced with a new thing. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 was basically like 1 and 2 anyway. But instead of like the free roam of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, you can just, it's just a 2-minute mode.
Yeah, it plays
Which-
exactly like the first 3 games did.
Yeah. There's like collector's editions and stuff, which comes with like skateboards and shit. So I don't know. I don't care about that. But it is being developed by Iron Galaxy. The original game was like 1 and 2 was developed by Vicarious Visions, but they're like in support studio hell at the moment. Have been for a few years. And Iron Galaxy did help port the original game to PC. I think was
The
I think-
1+2, yeah, they did the PC
yeah,
version.
they
of
did
that.
the PC version of that, so they're very familiar with the code base. They've also done a lot of stuff. They helped with Metroid Prime Remastered. They ported Skyrim over to Switch, Overwatch, Diablo 3, a bunch of other stuff. They've been very, very good at supporting the Switch. So yeah, 1 and 2 was actually quite good on Switch, so I imagine this
Yeah.
will be pretty good as well. I don't care so much that the free roam version of 4 is like being condensed into a 2-minute attack mode. Like, I played a little bit of 4 on the PS2 back in the day, and it was literally just like an empty world that you skate to an NPC, and then they tell you to do a challenge, and then you do the challenge within
Which
the
is
time
essentially
limit
what
anyway.
the series became after that point. Like, I remember
Yeah.
American Wasteland. There was one
Yep.
part where you had to like run or skate through a giant tunnel because it had to load up the next area, and it's this big snaky tunnel. And I'm like, you have to go back and forth multiple times to complete all the. And I was just like so bored of that. I'm like, and the whole then you can get off the board, and it's like, I'm playing a skating game. I want to skate. I don't want to run around on foot. So yeah, for all that sort of stuff, I'm happy that 4 is going back to the thing. It also makes more sense to have the 2 games have the same career mode instead of being 2 different types. So, and also I will point out that Tony Hawk himself leaked this the night before it was announced because he was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert and talking about it. It's like,
Oh, it wasn't a leak. He announced it. It was a predetermined announcement.
yeah, but the countdown and all that was for the next day, and he was on the show talking about it. I just thought it was funny. It's like,
Because like
I think
Colbert held up posters being like, "What is all this advertising we're seeing all around the world?" And then Tony Hawk was like, "Yeah, we're doing the announcement tomorrow." So like, as part of the marketing campaign to do that.
Yeah.
But no, I'm totally down for this. The funny thing was, though, is as I was watching this, I should have had this realization with Tony Hawk 1 and 2 coming out a few years ago. Was I was watching this, and then Ace of Spades played, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally in for this. I'm totally pumped." I'm like, "Oh no, this game has like real dad energy, like contemporary dad energy." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm a contemporary dad." Like at the moment, just without children. But regardless, I'm just like, man, this game looks so much fun. I cannot wait to play it. Because I really enjoyed 1 and 2, but I didn't have it on Switch or Steam Deck. I had it on PS4. So I'll probably get it for Steam Deck. We'll see later on this year. Because it's just, these games are so good for just portable play. Just being able to play
Especially
remotely or something
2
like
minutes
that.
at
Or
2
portably.
minutes at a time. They're
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's
for that.
so much fun. And they were so good back in the day. I really enjoyed these games. So I'm so glad
will
they're
say-
coming back.
The one thing that I was annoyed about the first game is there wasn't like any special characters. There was no like moon mode that you could unlock, at least that I found. But I like this one. They're like, no, collector's edition comes with Doom Guy and the Revenant from Doom
Well,
as
one of
playable
them
characters.
one of them had Freddy Krueger or something, and then in the trailer for this one, we saw someone with the Freddy Krueger shirt.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater
instead of the
3
character.
actually had Doom Guy as an unlockable in the US version of the game, because at the time
Activision
Activision
were publishing
was
the game,
publishing Doom games. So
And Darth Maul was in one of them as well. Might have been in
Yeah.
1 or 2.
I think he was in 1, and I think
Yeah.
Spider-Man was in
That's-
2.
never gonna happen again.
No.
It's like
Yeah,
it's
a bit of
Uh,
a shame.
peak of meme mode when the Revenant does a ramp and then takes out a fucking trumpet, and I'm just
And
like
toots.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
That's my Avengers Endgame moment right there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see what it looks like on Switch. Unfortunately, the Switch trailer, the one that Nintendo themselves put up, is just the same trailer as the other platforms, so it's unfortunately
Yeah,
not.
I was watching it and
Yeah.
I was like, this is not on Switch.
Yeah, and that's what's holding me back about getting excited about getting it on Switch. Is like, I know if I get it on Switch, it'll be the worst version of the game. So I'll wait a little
That's
while
the
and
thing, so
see. But I'd like
I-
to get it for Steam Deck.
Played the first. Well, again, we keep saying the first, but 1+2, I played that on Switch, and it plays beautifully. It doesn't look, as
Exactly.
good as the other versions
doesn't
do.
look as
but
great.
I think it's more though, if this comes out in July, it's coming out on Switch too. So like the Switch
Yeah, we'll
2
see.
version might be
Yeah.
totally fun.
We'll see.
I did. It was interesting, right? Because like I saw people talking about this and being like really upset that like certain things were cut out of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, which again I don't really care too much about. But I saw particularly people being like, "Oh, I can't believe like without the open world structure, they're probably going to get rid of the mini games." And I was like, "Well, first of all, not really, right? They can still do the mini games. They don't have
Yeah.
to do that." And then I looked up the mini games and like half of them are like, "Oh, you talk to a pimp and then bet on who's going to win in a fight between two prostitutes, and it's like, oh, okay, that
Probably,
sure.
I think they're getting rid of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, if that's what they're getting rid of, yeah, I'm fine.
That was the 2000s, baby. Pimps
uh,
and hoes. That's what we're all about.
even. Yeah, I mean, even in the 2000s, it was maybe a bit much.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying it was great. I'm just saying that was
Yeah.
what it was back then. That was
Yeah.
the kind of culture that we had as young men.
Yeah, it was not great. But you know, I'm excited to play this. I think it'll be good.
I was gonna say, now you have to transition to the next game, which is completely opposite of Pimps and Hoes.
Yeah, it sure is.
It almost sounds like it if you say it fast enough, though.
It does a little bit, yeah. All right. So yeah, Tempopo, which is the next game from Aussie developer. Which being no, this is good. It's an Australian developer. They make good shit. That's coming on April 17. So they also made Assault Android Cactus, which is a lovely little game, and Unpacking, which
good.
everyone knows.
You notice in the run chat I put the right one, like the original Unpacking.
Yeah, the real Unpacking, not the eShop ripoff Unpacking.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a little bit difficult to explain. You kind of need to like watch a trailer for it. But it's kind of like a musical puzzle game where all the enemies and like characters and stuff like move to the tempo, and it's like a little bit like Lemmings-ish as well. Like
it's like Lemmings meets a beat game meets Toad's Treasure Tracker.
Captain Toad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a little bit
yeah.
of Lolo, the Adventures of Lolo in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, once you hit play on it, you don't have control. Like you set up all the little the pause block and the turn block and all. You have to put all the little things down to make the path for them to follow. And then once you hit play, they just move to the rhythm.
Also, don't know what it is about it. Like the little girl's facial movements when things happen is nightmare fuel for me. It's something seems slightly off, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah. But no, I think this looks really, really lovely. They've been talking about this game for years, but we didn't really know like if it was so we had somebody at PAX. Was that you, Luke, that did the preview for it? Yeah. At PAX 2022, and we didn't really know at the time if this was actually going to become a full game or this was just like sort of a concept. Obviously, it is a full game now, and it looks absolutely wonderful. But yeah, this has been in the works for a really long time. They've been concepting this and refining it and perfecting it.
When I was playing it, I was playing it on a Steam Deck, and the Steam Deck had just come out globally, like in the States and that. So it was like one of those things where we were playing it and we were tucked away from their little indie booth thing, but we weren't like too far from because the guy still had to work there. But it was like super secretive that we were playing this game that wasn't really a project at that time. So yeah. I don't know if it's up. I don't know if it was part of Steam Next Fest that just happened, but there was a demo on Steam for the game. So if people are interested, they can actually head to Steam and see if it's still there and give it a go.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it just looks absolutely wonderful, and like Witchbeam are like just quietly one of the best like developers in Australia. Like we have a lot of really fantastic developers in Australia. I think Australia, the indie scene is absolutely thriving and doing utterly fantastic things. But Witchbeam is definitely at the top of their field, I think.
Yeah.
As the resident musician on this podcast, I need to point out that the little girl's conducting technique sucks. It is not very good.
Maybe that's what I feel is off. I feel it in my core that her conducting technique is not correct.
I'm watching it and I'm like, she would not be able to hold the attention of a 60-piece orchestra with that technique.
I mean, yeah, probably not. But no, it's yeah. I think more of these kind of like music-based games is like it's not really music-based, but it is kind of as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really nice and should. I feel like we haven't really gotten a game like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker in a while. So this kind of scratches that itch a bit.
Yeah, I just love like music. Like rhythm games are great. Music games are great as well. I just like when they kind of branch out into different genres a little bit, like a good like puzzle rhythm game or something like that, you know, or an action rhythm game. It's always great when something like that happens, and this seems to sort of do that too by just mashing up a
Yeah.
few different genres.
Ironically, the last really fun one that I can remember playing was Harmo Knight, which was from Game Freak on the
Yeah.
on the 3DS.
It's really good.
Well, I never played the Crypt of the Necromancer games. I have the first one, but I never played that or the Zelda one, and I haven't played what's that other one? Arranger, but is Arranger a rhythm game or not? I can't remember.
No, that's the puzzle one.
So that's not rhythm at all?
No, Range is where you slide the puzzles.
Yeah, I thought it was to
make
do
a
with
part.
music as well. There's another game that
No.
came out relatively recently that had to do with
Rift of the
playing
Necrodancer.
to
Which is
No,
the
it wasn't
new
that
one.
one. I knew that one was coming up, but there was something else. But yeah, no, we just don't get many rhythm games anymore.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because there's like a resurgence of plastic guitars this year.
Well, also the Rhythm Heaven games just kicked so much ass. They were so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
I would highly recommend playing Cadence of Hyrule though, the Zelda.
It's just never on sale.
Necromancer one.
And on Switch, I just rarely buy digital games if they're older, unless they're on sale. That's just me. That's probably my brain.
I mean, it's also like $30, so it's low enough that you could get it.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's really good. It's basically just like, what if Link to the Past had rhythm elements, which is a really fun idea for a game. Alrighty, there is a new Animal Crossing stuff happening in Australia. This is a really strange thing to see happen here of all places. But I guess after we had Nintendo Live and all of that, you know, an increased focus on Australia, this was only a matter of time. Yeah, there's Animal Crossing aquarium collaboration stuff coming to Australia at Sea Life.
Coming to the East Coast, you mean?
Yeah. So to Australia.
What's that?
I mean, I can't talk, like I live in Tasmania, like it's certainly not coming here. So yeah, in Australia and New Zealand, there is just all sorts of Animal Crossing aquarium stuff at Sea Life. So in Sydney, it starts on April 1st and lasts for about 7 weeks. Then go to Melbourne, Sunshine Coast, and Auckland. We don't have the dates for those yet, but there's like a stamp rally and character meet and greets and merch and stuff. We don't know if the merch is going to be the same as in other events, or it's just going to be like all original stuff, or just Animal Crossing merch in general. But it is
Yeah, they didn't really give out any specific details on the event, unfortunately.
No.
They just said it's coming on this date.
Yeah.
Look, if you were already going, fine, but because it's part of it's included in the ticket, so it's not like a separately ticketed event you've got to pay for extra. But this started in 2021 in Japan, so it's taken a while to make its way here. But it's a weird collab. If it was like at an animal park or something like a zoo, it sort of made a bit more sense because it's all animals. But instead, they're going for an aquarium, and the only thing you do in Animal Crossing with Sea Life is fish for it. And it's like not really the whole thing with conservation, but whatever. For people who live nearby to these locations, I'm sure if you're going, it'll be a fun little addition.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'll probably make the trip to Melbourne with my partner for this, because we both love Animal Crossing and we both love aquariums, so perfect crossover. But yeah, I think it's probably not worth making the trip solely for it, as enjoyable as it likely will be. But yeah, if you live in one of these 3 Australian cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and the Sunshine Coast, or in Auckland, and you have like, I don't know, what's like $40 to get into the aquarium,
Yeah, something like that.
then if you're in the area, make a day of it. Why not, right?
Yeah.
All right, more eShop shenanigans. We mentioned the whole unpacking ripoff shit. So there's a story that kind of broke. It's bullshit. So somebody, a developer of some kind. I loathe to call them a developer because let's be real, they're not exactly. Basically, a game released on Switch and PS5 and Xbox and it wasn't like a clone of it. Like a lot of the times, like we see these games where, they've recreated it and just done a shit job of it. This was a game that was like decompiled, on PC and then ported to Switch. Kind of. It's like I'm pretty sure it's like a Unity or whatever game. So, they probably imported it into Unity. Decompiled it to whatever degree you can, and then imported it into Unity, switched up a couple things, and then started just like publishing it on Switch and Xbox and PS5. The developer took to the internet to complain about it.
The developer of the original game.
The developer of the original game, the game that was stolen, took to the internet to complain about it, and then Sony and Microsoft took it down from the PlayStation and Xbox stores respectively. Nintendo took a little while longer. I think it was like an extra week, but it's gone there as well. But yeah, this is another instance of a developer being exploited and sort of let down by a lack of checks and balances on digital storefronts. This developer does this shit all the time. We don't know if all of their games are stolen, but like there's a lot of AI shit. There's a lot of like Unreal and Unity example games that they just like publish as their own thing as well. It's shit. Yeah.
The thing that this developer does, and it's still up there, and it makes me cringe every time I see it. Apart from the fact they use AI to generate their thumbnails, which therefore don't look anything like their actual games that they're producing. One of their thumbnails is for a supermarket shopping game, and they have an AI generated picture of a black person holding a watermelon.
Yeah.
It's like, cool. Not at all remotely appropriate, but the problem that this is like the third major time we've seen this. The first one was that Last of Us clone, which was complete and utter garbage, and then obviously we saw it last year with the Unpacking clone. But this is like the first time we've seen not a game inspired by or paying homage to anything, but this is a full-on rip-off of what would already exist. And obviously we're not the developer, we haven't spoken to them, but the story that they put out was that somebody reached out to them to say, hey, we'd like to publish your game on consoles, because at that time it was PC only, and he said no, or they said no, I should say. And then somebody else pointed out, hey, I think your game's on other platforms already. And it was a different name, different publisher, different developer. But it's like the same audio lines are there, the same textures are there. It's literally the same game, just repackaged on another platform by somebody else. So
yeah. And I don't know. I feel like we're gonna see like more of this shit and less like digital storefronts, because again, this isn't just a Nintendo problem. Nintendo was the slowest to act, but like this was something that happened on PlayStation and on Xbox, and the developer still has games up. Like the shitty like stealing developer, the thieves, still have games up on all three storefronts. Like they didn't have their publishing rights revoked on any of the storefronts. Sony and Microsoft just took them down, so did Nintendo. But it's still like they still have games up, and it's all just like cheap rip-offs. There's another game that we suspect is probably stolen. I'm not gonna name it because the developer of the original game is kind of a piece of shit too, so whatever, who cares on that front? Like I don't care that person is being damaged by it, but I do care that Nintendo is still letting this shit happen. It's a bad place to be in for the games industry, and like with more AI shit happening, like it's just gonna keep barreling towards more bullshit like this. And
yeah, look, if some indie movie producer got a copy of Star Wars and took it offline and then basically put a new label on the front of it and re-uploaded it, Hollywood would be on that. Well, Disney, because it's Disney, and Disney people think Nintendo is litigious. Disney blows them out of the water, right?
Big mouse, baby.
Yeah, but if somebody did that with a Hollywood movie, regardless of what it is, Warner Brothers, Universal, Disney, whatever, Hollywood would jump on that like a fly on shit. They would be all over it because they know they need to keep this crap away from their industry.
Yeah.
As much as people say the games industry is worth more than Hollywood and rah rah rah, they are notorious at protecting the developers. Now, if somebody did this to a Nintendo game, if somebody stole a Mario game, inverted the Mario colors, and called it a day and republished it on the eShop, Nintendo would have that down within an hour, and there'd be a lawsuit pending, and they'd go all out on it. So if it's their own stuff, they're happy to slap people down almost instantaneously. But if it's someone else, they tend not to give a crap, and it's a horrible look that the industry will maintain the status quo for themselves, but not for the people that support it outside of the big publisher model. And it's just getting worse and worse.
And like the fact that like this developer had tried to reach out to Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony to get this sorted through, and it was only when they started making posts online about it that anything actually happened. Like, that's shit. Like, you shouldn't have to like make a viral Reddit post to get a literal clone of your game taken down from digital storefronts. Like, that is ridiculous. And I think all 3 digital console storefronts need to be doing better. This happens on every storefront. Like, every single storefront, like mobile storefronts, Steam, like I'm sure Epic Games probably has a couple too. Like, it happens. But companies need to be doing more about it. They need to be protecting developers, and right now they're not. So
yeah,
get it together. Alrighty. Now it's time for the Angelo special. There were a couple of Nintendo Switch Online updates. Obviously, the single best Game Boy game ever made, Mario's Picross, is now available. I hate Picross, so I do not care about this. But Mario Picross is available.
Hate Picross?
I don't like it. I know.
I don't understand that series at all.
I understand it.
I
just
love
think
Picross.
I would
Hate's
rather
just a
play
strong
literally. I would just rather play literally any other puzzle game than Picross. But unimportant here. What we're talking about is Donkey Kong 94, Angelo's favorite game, I assume. Given how much he talks about it, and yeah, Angelo, the floor is yours. Tell us about Donkey Kong 94.
Picross is also incredible. I particularly like Picross 3D on the 3DS and DS. No, it wasn't on the 3DS. On the DS, it was amazing. But Picross is amazing. It's unfortunate that there isn't anything on the DS that's quite the same. But anyway, I digress. Donkey Kong 94 is finally on Switch Online Game Boy app. If you never played it, absolutely do it. It is incredible. It is, I would argue, one of Nintendo's most ambitious games on the Game Boy. On multiple fronts. It was, I believe it was the first game that had cutscenes in the Mario series. Straight up between each significant world that you go to, there is a cutscene that isn't just displaying like what's happening in the story, which there isn't really much of one, but it also just demonstrates new gameplay mechanics that you are then playing. And from that, there are so many different ways that you can play this game, even though your main moveset is just Mario jumping, grabbing things, and flipping. So like you can do side flips and triple jump flips. There are just so many other mechanics that you can use in the game when they become contextual to the level that you're on, that just make things so much more interesting. It's also a very big game. It's 99 stages, which is huge for a Game Boy game as well. Music's great. The animation is great. Characterization is fantastic. It was a direct sequel to the original arcade Donkey Kong game, where the first 4 stages are just pretty much exactly the same as the ones that you would play in the arcade. And then there are just 95, 96 other stages to just play through. Yeah, and each world that you go to is just kind of fun to go through as well. The first one that you go to is the city, which is supposed to be like, the Big Apple, like New York. And then you go, I think the next one after that is the ship. And then there's the forest, and then the desert, and all these other places. There's an airplane. And I think the last one is like the skyscraper or something, and that's where you have to fight Donkey Kong at the very end. And then each one of these, so every 5 stages or so, you then have to fight Donkey Kong himself, or you have to go up against Donkey Kong himself by going through a stage that he is sort of like throwing barrels and things at you from or whatever, and you have to kind of like maneuver yourself through those stages. But at the end of the actual world itself, it's a 1v1 fight with you and Donkey Kong, and again he's throwing barrels, and you have to get those barrels and throw them at him to knock him off his pedestal. But but yeah, it's an amazing game. It was Nintendo's sort of dip into like outside, when it comes to Mario at least, dipping away from the dedicated kind of platformer style games that we're used to and veering more towards puzzle platforming, where each stage you can only progress by getting a key to then bring you to a keyhole. Like but you can use that key as a weapon itself or as like an extra platform to jump on things. So yeah, it's an incredible game. Such an incredible game. It was also the debut, or the premiere game for the Super Game Boy, which was that Super Nintendo cartridge that allowed you to play Game Boy games on it, and was supported with full vibrant color and everything.
On
yeah.
the Switch, about the box art does have the little icon to say Super Game Boy supported it on the art, but the actual when you play it on Switch, because I was playing it the other day, it looks so good in color. Like it looks really, really nice.
It's amazing, and like it's a shame that we never got like a real direct sequel to this game. We got like a spin-off series, which was the Mario versus Donkey Kong games, but those weren't about Mario trying to save like Pauline in this case, or Peach or anything like that. It was actually just more foreshadowing just Nintendo's attitude towards copyright infringement, really. Because it just became Mario trying to steal back all of those stupid little Mario toys from a toy factory that Donkey Kong suddenly stole. And then it became like, what Mario versus Donkey... It was Mario versus Donkey Kong March of the Minis, and then like Mario Minis versus Donkey Kong or something like that. It just kind of
started
really...
becoming more Lemmings related more than...
Yeah, it really spun
else.
off into its own thing and didn't really come back to what it was. It'd be great to see a sequel to something like this someday, but I'm not holding my breath, which is a real shame. But if you have Nintendo Online, Nintendo Switch Online, definitely jump onto this game. It is so much fun, and each stage only takes a few minutes. Some of them can take a little longer because they can be a bit challenging. But yeah, I love this game.
I mean, with how many times you've mentioned it over the years about, I can't wait for this game to come here. When it finally did, hope. Yeah, when it finally did show up, I like shared this in our chat. I'm like, guys, new games. I immediately thought Angelo would like pop up because his sixth sense would trigger and he'd be summoned in, and it wasn't for a while that he turned up and was reacted to it. So it was funny to see his actual reaction.
Yeah. No, it's like my ridiculous bias aside, like just because this game is so good as a Game Boy game, it should have really been way earlier on in this app's existence. Like it was just such a good game.
Nintendo couldn't get the rights for it.
Yeah, no joke, to their own video game. Anyway, that's my spiel over. Sorry, Michael, you were saying something.
I was gonna say the big question is, will you be playing it on Nintendo Switch Online on your Switch?
Well, see, I've already started on my analog, so it's like,
there we go.
But no, I highly implore that anyone else starts it there, though. It's so good. So good.
The one thing I didn't put in the run notes, and I didn't think about it, is the fact that we're losing a game from Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, we are.
Oh yeah.
Super Soccer. Which, just before we talk about that, I just want to say it's really nice to understand how Angelo feels when I talk about Pokemon, because like my brain just like switched the fuck off when Angelo was talking about Donkey Kong.
That's fine. It's hard for me to listen to you talking about Pokemon, so
exactly, that's what I'm saying, right? It's like, we have a mutual understanding now. But yeah, so Spike Chunsoft, who may or may not own the rights to Super Soccer now, it's unclear. Anyway, Super Soccer is being removed from Nintendo Switch Online. It is the first and hopefully only game that is being removed from NSO. But removed nonetheless. It is.
It's probably because they can't have shredding on it. That's like offensive or something these days. Because the box art for our version has turf shredding soccer action printed on the front of it, and I think that's maybe offended somebody. I'm kidding.
I don't know. I think it's probably just a weird rights thing. Maybe Spike Chunsoft is selling off its library. Maybe they just want to sell a collection of retro sports games that they own, or something like that, right? Like it'll just be like, I don't think nobody's subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online, so they can play Super Soccer. So I don't. Given
that it is a sports game, there could be one random license thing that's buried in there, like one soccer jersey color scheme or something, and somebody's realized now and are arcing up, and they're just like, no, we'll just take it off and be done with it. So
this is where you just like make up names and shit, like that NES game that had Bobs and Dognut. Like that's what we should do. just to have fake names, fake teams that just sound completely ridiculous that nothing can ever happen to them.
Yeah, but I mean, the game's still going to be around for all of March. It's coming off at the end of March, so if you're desperate to play this game before it's gone, you still have a little bit of time.
Yeah. Some would use this point to argue that we should still have a virtual console so you could continue playing it. But again, I don't think anybody really gives a single fuck about Super Soccer. Like, it is one of those games that, like, we saw the update for it. It's like, oh, Super Soccer is being added to Nintendo Switch Online. I was like, okay, cool.
We don't care about the game coming to it. We don't care about the game going from it. The only thing we care about is the fact that it now sets a precedent of games going away.
Yeah, which hopefully it doesn't happen again. It could not. I mean, we won't know until it happens, unless it happens. But yeah. Alrighty. So moving on to our feature discussion. A couple episodes ago, we started talking about the history of the Switch and the games that Nintendo published on it. We only got about halfway through because that was taking way longer than we thought it would. Turns out Nintendo has published a lot of games since the Switch launched 8 years ago. So we're going to quickly go through the rest of the games. We got up to 2020 last time, and we're going to go 2021 through 2024, maybe 2025, we'll see.
Well, technically there's only one game out now from Nintendo in 2025, so I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, take us through it, Luke.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, when I was pulling all this together, I felt that 2021 onwards was sort of like the downward slope of games. Like, we didn't get a lot of original stuff from Nintendo. We started getting a lot of ports of Wii U games again. So you'll see it as we go through. But the start of 2021, we got Super Mario 3D World. It's an okay Mario game. Bowser's Fury was a good addition, but it also didn't feel like 3D World in any way, shape, or form. Just it was a 3D space, so it was a bit weird.
Like a tech demo for the next game.
Yeah, which being the next original Mario game was Wonder. It's a really weird thing. Then we got Bravely Default in February. Again, at that time it was Switch exclusive, so Nintendo published it outside of Japan. And then the game people have been wanting since the original one in April, we got New Pokemon Snap, and then nobody bought it. So it's a weird thing.
3 million copies? Something like that, right?
The amount of people that were clamoring for it, you'd have thought it would have sold 10, 15, 20 million, right? I personally didn't play this one at all. I was looking at it and I'm like, it just looks like a somewhat shinier version of the Pokemon Snap we got on the 64, but without the ability to print my photos at Blockbuster. So it was a bit weird. But you know, it is what it is, I suppose. Then there it is. Moving on from there. In May, we got the weirdest release ever with the Famicom Detective Club remakes.
Yeah.
Because, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that they finally got a chance outside of Japan, because they never did up until this point. But it was just like it wasn't even a left field thing. It was like the ball came in from another stadium entirely. Nobody saw this one coming at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think in retrospect it makes sense, right? Because they would have just greenlit like Amio, and then they were like, "Well, we should probably put the first two games out first." So it makes sense in retrospect, but at the time it was like, "What the hell are you doing, Nintendo? Just like put Famicom Detective Club remakes out 30 years after the fact." That was very weird.
And it was a twofer as well, so you got both games in sort of a bundle.
Yeah,
and
unless you're in the US.
Unless you're in the US, yeah. What was funny though is these games are actually directed by the producer of the Metroid series. Mm-hmm. So there you go. In May we got Miitopia, the game that nobody wanted and nobody bought, because Miitopia wasn't fun on the 3DS when Miis were a huge thing, and it was even less fun on Switch when Miis weren't a thing at all. So there you go. And then June is the game that I think Ollie played out of the four of us. He's the only one who played it, but DC Superhero Girls Teen Power.
Yeah, it's based on the DC Superhero Girls TV show, which I did not know existed until I played this game. But I played this and reviewed this, and it's a pretty competent sort of superhero, just like 3D exploration brawler game. It was fun. Nothing special, but didn't need to be.
But it does have one little star next to its name. It is the only exclusive DC game released on a single platform, because every other DC games hit multiple platforms. In Switch, because we talked about it last time, but Marvel Superhero Ultimate Alliance 3 on Switch, the Black Order. So Switch is the only console in history to ever have an exclusive Marvel and an exclusive DC game.
Yep. And Nintendo is the only platform owner to have an exclusive, to have published an exclusive DC, a DC and a Marvel game.
Yep.
Which is wild.
So I just thought it was interesting. 2021 continued with Game Builder Garage. I always put it the other way. To me, it's Game Garage because games are made, in garages. It was basically, it took the Labo concept of making your own things, but made it more GUI friendly. So that was fine. Mario Golf Super Rush in June, that was fine. Mario Golf, it's Mario Golf. What can you say? And then in July we got The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, which was a fantastic update. It did have one slight problem in that they locked one of the game's best new additions behind an amiibo. They paywalled the ability to fast travel back to the sky.
It was the Zelda HD remake that people have been asking for.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, I was about to say, like, this is the game that Michael had hoped for throughout the entirety of the Switch's run, and he finally got it in 2021. So, congrats to Michael for getting every Zelda game that he's ever wanted.
Yep. And I will say this is also one of this game was done by Tantalus down in Melbourne as well.
Yeah.
They did the Twilight Princess HD version. So it's very nice that they were able to do that. The rest of 2021 was kind of big. We got Switch OLED in October, same day as Metroid Dread, which was, Metroid Dread's a fantastic game. Ollie didn't like it because he got chased by giant robots that stabbed him repeatedly.
That was Michael. I loved
me.
it. I just couldn't finish it.
Yeah, sorry. I just remember somebody got stabbed by robots and didn't like it. But September,
it's terrifying.
Don't chase me, anyone, please.
Sorry, I just flashed back to that Simpsons thing. Don't chase me, I'm full of chocolate.
Don't make me run, I'm full of chocolate.
But yeah, September we got another WarioWare. I think that was like the third WarioWare game on Switch at that point, or Wario-esque type game.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so because they're so simple to make. And then we also got the second Mario Party game the first Mario Party game on Switch, sorry. Hang on, first or second? I can't remember now.
Second,
there you go.
One. You're talking about Super Mario Party. This is Mario Party.
That's the one. Because those names aren't, super confusing.
One of them's good and one of them's not good.
That's true.
Not great.
This is the one that got we were surprised because a few months ago we got that random multiplayer update to the first game.
Yeah.
But then end of 2021 we got the remakes of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and then we got the Happy Home Designer DLC for Animal Crossing, which launched inside of the Switch Online expansion pack, which gave that some real value. One of only like 3 DLCs that ever launched into it. Hyrule Warriors got its expansion pass, and then they flopped again in December with Big Brain Academy, Brain versus Brain, because for some reason they thought that was a game people wanted as well. So some highs and lows in 2021, like some really good games and then some really average releases. But it is what it is, I suppose. Moving straight on to 2022, we kicked off with Pokemon Legends Arceus in January, and then the Booster Course Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which by the time it was done, doubled the course count to 96 courses, it's an insane number of courses in a single game for one.
It was wild, right? Like, because it was like 5 years after Deluxe came out, and 8 years after the original game came out. Like, the fact that we just it's like, oh yeah, here, by the way, we're doing 32 more tracks for
Mario Kart 42 in the end.
42, yeah. More tracks for Mario Kart 8. Okay.
And sure, some of them are the weird tour tracks based on Rio and Sydney and shit. It's some of those are okay, some of those are shit, right? But The bunch like we got a couple of original tracks, like the bathroom one. There was the freezer ice
The ice cream one, yeah.
one. So we got some original tracks, but most of them were just updated versions of classic tracks from old games. I think Choco Mountain was in one of them, so one of the packs. And then March was a 1-2 punch of Triangle Strategy, again at the time Switch exclusive, and then Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which is probably one of the best Kirby games that's been made in a long time.
I reviewed these games back to back, and it was a lot, but great games.
Yeah. I mean, the Kirby games, there's always been people who like one type of Kirby game over another, but this one just sort of seemed to have everything that people liked. So, then in April we got Nintendo Switch Sports because that was the thing that people wanted, and it sold relatively well. But the problem that it had was that it had the Nintendo, asterisk around it, where it's like, yeah, you can play tennis, but it's always 2 players versus 2 players. There was never like any 1v1 option. Or you can play bowling, but you can't do, the big 300 pin mode that we put in the last game we made for this. So there was some fun stuff in it, but there was just a lot of Nintendo bullshit attached to it, unfortunately. But it did well. And then 8 months later, we got the golf update for it. And then like 2 years later, we got the basketball update. We knew about golf. We knew golf was coming, but the basketball one was a surprise. So,
which I feel like the basketball one was Tantalus. Am I wrong on that?
It was somebody. It wasn't Nintendo Direct. It was another group. I don't recall who it was though. But yeah, it was such a weird thing. And of course, it did have. If you bought it at retail, it came with a leg strap, so you could put a Joy-Con on the strap on your leg and play soccer that way. Which I don't know anyone that actually did that.
You muted Angelo.
You muted Angelo.
I swear with Nintendo, they'll create DLC for a game, and anytime they go to publish it, they literally just like get someone just to like put in like a random date generator, just like beep boop beep, and then there we go. No one knows when it's coming out, not even Nintendo itself. Just
release date is the range from 1 day to 4 years, and just random generate.
Yep.
But yeah, and then a month and change after that, we got Mario Strikers Battle League Football, which is what it was called here in Australia and Europe. And that was one of those games that was weird for me because it had that same thing Michael talked about earlier, where it had this weird LOD, and all the characters in the background were doing like 3-frame cheering animations behind the players. So the action on the pitch was beautiful, like the Next Level Games, because they came off Luigi's Mansion 3 before this one, made a beautiful game. Especially when you do the big kicks and the big power attacks, like it looks stunning. And then you look at the backgrounds and the characters are barely moving because they don't have enough frames in their animations. So yeah, that was there. And then I don't know why this game exists, but in June we got Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which was the Muso-style game set between the time jump between 3 houses. So the first part of 3 houses is thing, then there's a time jump, and then there's a second one. And this is the game that takes place in between that. So, and I don't recall it even breaking 1 million. I don't think it sold very well at all.
I don't think they ever told us. I think we know that it sold over 1 million through Koei Tecmo saying that it sold over 1 million, but Nintendo never gave numbers, so it never sold more than 1 million in a single quarter.
Yeah. But whatever. Then I feel this sort of slide shows that and I hate to say it, but we ate really good that time, because Live Alive, remake of a Super Nintendo game that never released outside of Japan, used that in HD 2D style that Square Enix sort of kicked off with. What was the game that did it? I want to say Triangle Strategy, but that's not
Traveler.
That's the one.
Octopath, yeah.
And then obviously they've just used it recently in the Dragon Quest remake. So we got that. People who played it loved it. It's unfortunately it's a weird sort of game. It's not a traditional straight JRPG. And then in July, we were supposed to have Splatoon 3, but they swapped it around with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. For whatever reason, the massive 80-hour RPG was ready before the 8-player shooter game was ready. So July we got Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and then in September we got Splatoon 3. Obviously, they launched a DLC pass with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and then we got Kirby's Dream Buffet, which I feel like should have been a free-to-play game because it felt like it was a free-to-play game, but it wasn't. Yeah, it's like $23 or something to buy it.
I just want to say that there has never been a slide in a PowerPoint presentation that has better represented me as a person than this slide. Like, Live Alive, Yoko Shimomura soundtrack, absolute banger of a game. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, one of my favorite games of all time. Splatoon 3, I put like 100 hours into that, into competitive. You know, I love Kirby. It's perfect. All of this slide, I would change nothing about it. If every single 3-month period on Nintendo Switch was like this, I would just be so happy.
I mean, if it works for you, why not? Then, like, the end of 2022, we ended up with Bayonetta 3, which obviously there's a big thing around that one with the voice actress for Bayonetta and all that sort of stuff. And then Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, which unfortunately, while they were technically sound games in terms of gameplay, the performance and the visuals were muddy at best. To be nice.
Buggy as fuck at launch.
All right, to not be nice, they were bad games. They were not well received. I think even Game Freak or Nintendo actually admitted, like, they came out and said something about them.
Nintendo apologized for the performance and said that they were going to fix it, and then they never did. But
Nintendo,
that was Nintendo as a publisher rather than like
the developer.
Nintendo as a developer.
This is the first time I've actually looked properly at the cover art for these games. I'm only just realizing that on the chests of both of these Pokemon, they have tire treads.
Yeah,
I'm only just realizing that now.
Which is hilarious because
I knew that. I just didn't realize that they had the tire treads on their chests.
Yeah,
that is.
So last
bizarre.
year, Pokemon Company partnered up with Toyota to make Koraidon. Was it the one they did?
They did Miraidon first, and then they just
Miraidon,
yeah.
And they just announced like 2 days ago a partnership with Honda to make a motorcycle version of the other one. They're not rideable. Like, they do move because they've got wheels, but they're not physically. You can't get on and ride it around the streets. But they made actual bikes in Japan of these Pokemon.
And I'll bet no one can buy them. And so, like, what was even the point?
They're promotion things. You can go up and take a photo next to it. And that's the thing. They won't even let you stand. They won't even let you sit on the bike because, it's too heavy to be functional. So it's like bolted into a frame so it doesn't tip over. So again, it's movable, but it's not usable in any way, shape, or form. And if they had have done this at the launch for the games, it would have made more sense than 3.5 years later.
Yeah, it's weird to be doing that in 2025.
Yeah. So, but there you go. 2023 kicked off with Toothpaste Hair, another Fire Emblem game, which we think is one of those ones that should have been out the year before. They just delayed it for some reason.
The Fire Emblem cover, every time I look at it, this was for Fire Emblem Engage. It's just like Fire Emblem Helvetica. Like, that font for Engage is just so jarring. Like, who approved that?
So weird, right? It's like we didn't come up with the logo, and this like box art is due in like 25 minutes. So
very odd.
That's
weird
just
choice.
Fucking hits a bit.
Yeah. This is a little trivia. So I'm drawing blank on their name now. The people that make Fire Emblem and thing. Intelligent Systems. That's the one. Intelligent Systems released a game a year. So this one released in January. They didn't release a game in 2022, and I suspect this was supposed to be in 2022, but got delayed a little bit. If this released in 2022, Intelligent Systems have released a game a year since 1997, without fail. This is the first time they ever missed a year in 2022, and again, I think it's because it just slid out of the year. So, that's as a developer, they're that consistent in releases. They've been able to have a game a year. Talking to you, Xbox.
It's probably a COVID thing.
Yeah, probably. I will say, like, I am a fan of Fire Emblem, but like, I care so little about this game. It's like the only Nintendo published game that I don't own. And also, I just am learning for the first time that it had an expansion pass. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's my job to know about this shit, and I still don't know. Like,
That's how little of an impact it made on the world that a Fire Emblem fan didn't know the Fire Emblem game came with DLC. So, but yeah. So it launched, people didn't care, but then a few weeks later we had a direct and they shadow dropped Metroid Prime Remastered onto Switch. And the fact that we're now 2 years past this and they haven't done the same for 2 and 3 really, really annoys me. Because it's like they've got the tech in, they've got the pipeline in place, they know what they're doing. But yeah.
She's dead.
They have the technology.
What a banger of a game, though. I had never actually played like Metroid Prime in full before, and I did it for the first time.
The game is amazing. The remaster is absolutely perfect. Like they just nailed it.
Yeah, and I think I was gonna write about this, but then I never did. Like I think the beauty of like Metroid Prime Remastered is that like, or Metroid Prime in general, I guess, is that like it takes all these familiar things and like recontextualizes them. I think that is like a really powerful gameplay mechanic in that like suddenly being in 3D and first person and like all of that, because obviously I've played like every Metroid game to death and back, except the Prime series.
And Dread.
Like suddenly, well, yeah, I didn't finish Dread. But yeah, being in 3D and like seeing all this stuff from the first person view, and it's like all this familiar stuff but in a completely different context is just so jarring and like anxiety inducing, but in a good way. It's weird. It's super difficult to explain, but I loved this.
I also like the fact that it's first person, but it's not a first person shooter. So you don't have to have twitch responses every second of the game that you're playing, because there are times when you'll walk through a corridor and you might see an enemy off at a distance, but you don't have to engage with it, which is a big thing with Metroidvania games. You can sort of just skip over, enemies and all that. So, yeah, I don't know.
That said, I did blast the fuck out of anything I saw.
Oh yeah.
I think the only way this game could have been improved is if they had actual GameCube controller support, which I understand why they didn't do. But like, I think that's the literal only thing that they could have done to improve it.
I thought it did have GameCube controller support.
Nope.
No, because it's using the Wii style control scheme where they.
Okay, you mean proper GameCube?
Yeah. Like a plug in a GameCube controller and it plays like the GameCube game.
Yeah. But yeah, and then end of the month we got another Kirby remake, because for some reason people keep buying Kirby remakes.
It's so weird that this was like a remake and not just a remaster. This is like a trend that like Nintendo took to from this point onwards. Is like they did things that like should have just been remasters and turned them into full remakes, and it's like you're just wasting development resources. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But
we also got the first half of the Splatoon 3 expansion pass, which added one thing that nobody wanted and made no improvements to the game whatsoever, in that they added the main square thing from the first game. From Splatoon 1, they put that in Splatoon 3 and they called it an expansion.
It was purely just a buy the DLC now and not later, so you don't forget about it.
Yeah.
Like it was, yeah.
So, but yeah, it started off well. Then we had a pretty decent period. Bayonetta Origins, Serrator, and the Lost Demon from Platinum. A weird Bayonetta game, because it's absolutely nothing like Bayonetta, but that's why it's not called. It's basically Serrator is the branding for it. It was fine. It's a unique sort of top-down adventure game, like an isometric, not isometric, but sort of top-down isometric. It did okay. Then Advance Wars finally released after having been delayed because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It didn't do so well. People really wanted it, and it came out, and it just didn't hit the right notes for a lot of players.
Because it looked like trash.
I think Nintendo was just like really hesitant to market it with the war in Ukraine still going on. Like,
I think weirdly, like moving to also definitely that, right? But I think moving to 3D somehow made it worse. Like it makes no sense, like logically, but it is somehow. I don't know.
The performance was pretty bad as well from memory. I haven't played it.
It wasn't great.
And then what's really funny is there's the pixel art one. They've got two of them now on the Switch, and I can't think what it's called.
Warframe.
Wargroove.
No, Wargroove. Warframe. Definitely not Warframe.
Warframe is a very different game now.
But yeah, Wargroove came out before this one released, and it did fairly well, right? It's pixel art, map editor, and all that. And then Wargroove 2 came out, and it was like the same game, but just more of it, and people really liked it. So,
what they should have done was what they should have done with this was remake the DS games, release those, and then put the two Game Boy Advance ones on the app. Would have done way better IMO.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that the two are the Game Boy Advance ones on the app now? I don't think they are, right?
No, because they've remade them. Why would they give away the other ones for free?
Yeah.
Bummer. I honestly would have loved to have seen the Famicom and Super Famicom versions of Advance, the actual Nintendo War series, hit the Switch, but whatever. Then in May we got Tears of the Kingdom. It was just more Breath of the Wild with Sky and Basement essentially. You either liked it or you didn't. There was nothing different.
Sky and Basement.
Basement.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Like in my excerpt for when I put it on socials, I just said it's a sequel because I'm like, it's just more of what we already got. And if you liked Breath of the Wild, you like this. If you didn't like Breath of the Wild,
I don't
Ollie
think it's
being
true
the
though. I had many friends that loved Breath of the Wild and did not enjoy Tears of the Kingdom.
so
And
my
I
issue
was
with
the
Tears of the
opposite.
Kingdom
I
was
hated
it
Breath of
was,
the Wild, but loved
but it was
Tears
just
of the
more of
Kingdom.
the same. Like I didn't feel like there was enough difference between the two games. It felt like it was an expansion that just ballooned out in size. So
I feel like it's difficult when you try to shoehorn a lot of like creative tools into a game. It's great for people who like really thrive on that, but like 98% of us are just like kind of normal, grey matted people, and so we'll just keep building bridges, and that's all we'll do with creative tools. We'll just keep building the one thing that we know how to build and just make it bigger and bigger when we need to. Whereas you get the fun YouTubers and stuff who make like ridiculous things, but like a lot of us aren't going to engage with the game in that way, and that was such a huge crux of that game, was to try and build all these insane machines.
I feel like this is going to be, I don't know, maybe controversial opinion. I guess I'll get crucified at some point. I don't feel like both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are actual Zelda games. They don't feel like Zelda to me at all.
That's fair. I think, I don't know. Tears of the Kingdom, I think, felt more like a Zelda game, but it still felt like Breath of the Wild trying to do a Zelda game rather than a Zelda game, right? Like it was this other series that is Breath of the Wild. But
so the
doing
the game from Ubisoft, Immortals, Phoenix Rising, whatever it was called. That was very much Breath of the Wild. That's kind of what Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom feel like to me. It's like another company's trying to do their take on a Zelda game, and that's what this ended up being. Like I get the Zelda elements in it, but it's like a lot of it's still different. It's like if you played Ocarina of Time and then you played another company's attempt at Ocarina of Time, you still get like that Zelda whiff, but it's not what you were expecting, and that's what I feel like this sub-series is. And we know it's not part of the main series because it's not connected to the main timeline. Whatever the timeline ends up being.
Let's not get into the fucking timeline shit.
But I'm just saying, like in terms of the games, like these are the only two that don't live on that timeline, which shows that they're not part of it. But we'll move on before we go into any further with that.
Yeah, it's kind of the last combo.
June and July, I honestly, and again, I know Pikmin, people like Pikmin, but Pikmin 1 plus 2 as a release, okay, whatever. Nintendo released two Wii versions of GameCube games, slightly updated for the platform. They renamed Pikmin to Pikmin 1 because I don't know why it needed the number, but they did. So now all four mainline Pikmin games are on Switch. Only Hey Pikmin is absent. It's there. People are okay with that. Pikmin 4, if you didn't like Pikmin, nothing was going to bring you in on this game. There are some good things about it, but it wasn't like a revolutionary change or anything like that. And then there was something in June, but nobody cares what that was.
Oh, man.
That's a
remember when, like,
video exclusive.
Remember when early reports about that game came out, and it was just like, yeah, Nintendo, like everybody hated this. Nintendo did focus testing, and it was just dog shit. Nobody liked it.
And that was like 2 years before the actual release, so people just assumed Nintendo just put it on the shelf and forgot about it. And the next thing we heard, Nintendo were flying people from around the world to Tokyo to go hands-on with the game, and not journalists, not people who report on this stuff. They flew influencers. Like this is the first time that I can recall them flying influencers anywhere. Not just like flying someone from Sydney to Melbourne or from Los Angeles to San Francisco, but flying like, from
influencers can be paid to say anything.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
But that's what I mean. Like they did this big thing. It's like, this is a real big thing. Why do you do? And then it's like, oh, it's for everybody 1-2 Switch. Like, okay, that's a bit of a weird thing, but sure. But yeah, so that was that period. Then October 2023, I think we had a really good time. Obviously, we got the DLC for Scarlet and Violet, the first. What was it? The Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, and then it had the subtitle. We got F-Zero 99, which was the first new F-Zero game in 14 years. By that point, that came out in the West. There was a Game Boy Advance game that came out a couple of years after the last one that we got. We just got that a couple of months ago on Switch Online. So, but this is the first new one for us in like 14 years. We got Detective Pikachu Returns after God knows how many years of it being in development. Still with the Danny DeVito type voice that they put on the game because people wanted Danny DeVito to voice the character. Thank goodness it wasn't Ryan Reynolds. And then obviously in October, we got Mario Wonder, which was, apart from the fact they recast Mario and Luigi, with a new actor. It was a pretty fun game. Gameplay wise, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, banger.
No, nobody had any comments on that one. Just
No,
'cause
it was just it's
a
just
great
good
game.
games, you know.
10 out of
Um,
10. You muted again, Angelo.
Sorry, I keep muting because I type on my keyboard and I want to come through the microphone. And I keep feeling to unmute. No, I love the voice in Mario 1. I thought
Yeah, I think it's great.
I thought the whole game was a great new, like, you know, slight deviation from the original sort of flavor of Mario platformers that we got.
I don't
loved everything about
think they could have handled the transition any better than they did, quite frankly. And that's a
Absolutely.
rare Nintendo W to be honest.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
new
Right down-
type of game and gameplay and a new voice, and just I think they did it great.
And even though like they still kind of like did their own weird Nintendo choices for multiplayer, like online multiplayer, it still sort of worked, which was odd.
Yep.
So yeah.
November we got.
It was really good, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, multiplayer was fine. I love the gameplay. I just personally don't like the voice of Mario from that one. But that's me.
That's right.
November we got 2 games. Another WarioWare game, which yay. It's ubiquitous at this point, I think. And then we got the remake of Super Mario RPG, which people weren't asking for, but shocked a lot of people, and they were happy with it. So it did drop the subtitle though, which I think is a little weird. I would have loved to have seen the subtitle on it.
Yeah, I mean, also the box art is just dog shit. Like, just
the
white
box art's the
background
Japanese
with
version.
some characters. Yeah, I know, and it
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, the version that we got outside of Japan.
This is the Fire Emblem Engage of box art.
Yeah.
The one. Oh shit, we need this done. Yeah, so that was fine. And then 2024. I think 2024 is probably one of their weakest years from Nintendo. I don't think they had a pretty good not in terms of the actual quality of the games themselves. I just think in terms of lineup, it's probably one of their weakest years. They kicked off the start of the year with another code. I've always questioned: is it recollection or recollection? Because it's 2 games.
It's
It's
both.
yeah,
It's
both,
recollection because it's related to the memories of the character, but it's also as in like, regarding collection. It makes it clear when you open up the game. It's very silly, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's not in the
It's
box art.
both.
That's why it's really weird.
Yeah, recollection is the
Yeah.
the name. Yeah.
So, but yeah, there was a DS game and a Wii game, just remade completely from the ground up on Switch. That was fine. Then we got the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake from the GBA game on Switch, which was done by NST, the folks who'd just done F-Zero 99. And then Princess Peach Showtime, which the biggest thing I can say about that is that in the initial art, Peach's eyes were much softer, but in the final art, she looks angrier. They made her angry in the art for some reason.
They US Kirby'd her. I don't know why.
Yeah, like it's definitely not a game for me, and I know some people really liked it. But it is what it is. At least one of her abilities in this game was not crying, because that
That's
still
true.
annoys the hell out of me from the DS game that they made for her. Then the next sort of period, we got Endless Ocean Luminous. I don't know why, but we did. So there you go. Then we got the remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And this is one of those ones Ollie was saying before. It's like they could have just remastered the GameCube one and called it a day, and people would have been happy. But
yeah,
they remade it from the ground up.
I think there's zero functional difference between a remaster and a remake for this game. Like it would have looked almost identical and probably
and
still been
still
60 FPS.
only performed. It's the wild choice for me. Anyway,
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Then in June we got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. The fact we didn't get Luigi's Mansion 1 at the same time, like in a bundle, makes no sense to me, because I don't know. But this is also done by Tantalus down in Melbourne. So Tantalus have done now 4 products for Nintendo. 3 or 4. So pretty good work for them. Then we get the weirdest release since Game Garage Builder in Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, because they had a banger of a release with NES Remix on the Wii U, and they did a second one which is just as good, and then they just didn't release them ever again elsewhere because
They were on the 3DS as well.
but they didn't port that across the Switch and call it a day. Like, they ported a heap of other Wii U games, not the 2 Michael wants, but a heap of other ones, but they just decided to remake an entirely new one, or make a new one entirely from scratch for this one.
I played this game for a hot weekend. It was great.
I played
It's
this
very
game for 35 minutes.
I loved it. I thought it was really good.
I
The
tried
only
to
other
buy
I
it
can-
in Japan and it was just sold out everywhere. Like I was there on launch day in Japan and I could
in
not
Japan,
find
they
it. I
didn't
went to,
come
like,
with the pins. Like there wasn't there like a pin set or something that it came.
No,
with?
you could get it. The physical version had like the Famicom controllers from Nintendo
That's
Switch
what it was.
Online,
Yeah, that's
which I
right.
really wanted, but yeah, I couldn't get it, which was a bummer.
And then in August we got Emio the Smiling Man, the brand new Famicom Detective Club game, which again, that whole reveal was like the weirdest thing in existence because nobody knew what the hell Nintendo were doing when every
Yeah.
single social channel from them all dropped the same "Who is Emio" thing at once.
So good.
Yeah, and then end of September was the Echoes of Wisdom, the first official game where you could play as Zelda inside of the Legend of Zelda series. Of course, the first one being the CDI game that nobody likes and very few people even acknowledge exists. Except collectors on eBay who want like $6,000 for it. Of course they do.
Echoes of Wisdom was good though.
Oh yes, fantastic game. That's why it's worth every penny. End of 2024, we got Mario Party Jamboree, which we've all said we'll play together at some point, and then we just
really
keep
gotta
forgetting.
do it. It's really bad.
So that was there. We got a brand new Mario and Luigi game for the first time in 8 or 9 years at that point.
Yeah.
Which
I'm really hoping this loads faster on Switch too, because I want to play it so badly. But God, there's so much loading in the game that it actually makes it a problem.
Also, I just want to say, what the fuck is up with this box art? Just like plain white background again. Like, what are you doing, Nintendo? Like, the Super Mario RPG had it as well, and now this has just like a plain white background too. Like
Any type of RPG game released from Nintendo is plain white background only.
Live Alive was a plain white background. And then wrapping up 2024 was Fitness Boxing 3, Your Personal Trainer. That is the full name because every time you boot up to that game, it literally goes, Fitness Boxing 3, Your Personal Trainer. It's very, very loud and obnoxious. But I played it for about 6 weeks and I did enjoy it. It's one of those things like you can use it for an existing thing, but nothing else because it doesn't register any movements. You can just flail around and it goes, oh, nice uppercut. And it's like, I didn't do one, but sure. And then obviously 2025, the only 2 games we've got dates on, one's already out now with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, and then coming up in a few weeks is the Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which is another one of those Wii U games that, we've wanted for the longest time to leave the Wii U, and it finally is, leaving just a very few Wii U games locked onto the platform.
I don't know. I can't
can't
think of anything
imagine any of them.
notable. Yeah.
No, not a single thing.
Yeah, the day they bring Dr. Luigi across to Switch, I'll be very happy. So, but that's it. That is everything Nintendo has published
We did
on the
it.
Switch.
Yeah.
So.
And all of them straight bangers, except Everybody Want to Switch, which who wanted that? Who cares?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I own most of these, and they're all pretty good. I think this is probably Nintendo's best lineup for a console ever. If we're being honest, like if we talk about the console as a whole, like I don't think there is anything that has hit the highs that the Switch has so consistently.
Yeah,
I think if there's a single year throughout the Switch's library where there hasn't been a game, just one game at least, that you enjoyed or was for you, I think you need to expand your horizons a bit because there's some really, really fantastic games every single year.
I personally think that every major IP from Nintendo had at least one Smash release on Switch.
Yeah.
So Donkey Kong probably the exception because both the big releases for that series were ports. And there's nothing else really from that series.
Hey, there was a Donkey Kong theme in Tetris 99, so that kind of counts.
Yeah, that's what I want. I'm a Donkey Kong fan.
Okay.
To be fair, Donkey Kong did get an entire land in a theme park. So, like, not even Mario got his own land. It's Super Nintendo World and Donkey Kong. So, little thing like that.
The Switch is also the longest running active console in a generation as well.
It's about 1,000 days over the Wii, which was their previous longest selling console on the market between when it launched and when the Wii U launched.
And I think it's safe to say that the reason why 2024 was a slow year for the Switch was because I'm sure even Nintendo was expecting the Switch 2 to come out sometime last year as well.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's move on to what I would like as a very quick round of Nintendo 20 questions. We will move on from the game. But Angelo, I do see you playing Monster Hunter Wilds, and I'm glad. Such a banger of a game.
Very good game.
It is, yeah. 20 questions. Michael, do you want to start us off with a question? Angelo is the person who knows the game.
You know what's coming.
I have two
Angelo.
games. I have two games, and I'm choosing. I've got one here. I'm like, oh, but yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. Let's go.
I will ask: was this game supplied by our listeners, or was this an Angelo pick?
This is an Angelo pick.
I did get a very good suggestion.
Question one.
So I will.
Was this game released on or after January 1st, 2010?
So what year?
2010, sorry. I laughed through the year.
Yes, it was after 2010.
Okay.
Was this game released on a... was this game released on a handheld only system?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so DS or 3DS.
Mm.
Or it's a weird Switch Lite exclusive that I've never heard of. Or it could be like DSiWare.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many games on DS and 3DS.
Yeah. DS has such a huge library. Right. Was this game published by Nintendo?
Yes.
Oh, that cuts it down a little bit.
Was this game released on Nintendo DS?
No.
So 3DS. It also cuts it down a little bit.
I feel like we need to clarify if it was DS or DSi, because like...
Oh, when I say DS, it's the DS family.
That's what I was like hoping for.
I don't think Angelo would be like, no, actually,
Yeah,
it's
no.
the DSi.
A 3DS game published by Nintendo. Was this game developed in Japan?
Yes.
Does this game feature recognizable Nintendo characters?
I don't think so.
That makes me think it's something like Dylan's Rolling Western, or...
I was thinking Dylan's Rolling Western, yeah.
I've never heard of that game.
All right, it's not that game.
It's not that game.
Clearly, Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers.
Oh yeah, because were the others on 3DS or just DS?
I think there was
think the
one
series was-
on DS and then two on 3DS.
Couldn't tell you.
Is this
Okay.
game an RPG?
No.
It could also be Fossil Fighters.
I would say Fossil Fighters is very firmly an RPG.
I'd line it more like Pokemon, where it's like kind of an RPG, kind of an adventure, but
Yeah, I would still say it's more RPG than anything. But
yeah, I suppose that's splitting hairs with that.
we'll
point.
keep it in mind just in case.
Okay. Does this? Would you consider this game to be a puzzle game?
No.
I don't know why I'm thinking of Steel Diver.
Yeah.
Just a really early 3DS game.
Is this game part of... Sorry. Is this game part of a series?
The first one and the launch and the free-to-play one.
Part of a series?
Yeah.
No.
See, the Steel Diver definitely could be it. I was thinking
This
of
is-
the what was it called? Spirit Camera. It was like a spin-off of the Fatal Frame series.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like genuinely, what the fuck is
There,
Spirit?
there was like a spin-off like AR game where on the 3DS where you could like take a picture or like move the camera around in your house and like things would pop up. It was just like Fatal Frame, but in your
It'd be
own
hilarious if
house.
he's picked Face Raiders from the Nintendo 3DS.
That would be
That'd be
sounds like
amazing.
great.
Yeah, the problem with Steel Diver is the second one was like a modified version of the original that was free to play. So it was technically a sequel, but also technically like a chopped up version of the first. So it's like a weird release. I'd still consider it a second game, but some people don't.
Trying to think of what else they could be.
It's the published by Nintendo, but not featuring recognizable characters. It's throwing me.
And like so many of like the stuff that doesn't have Nintendo characters are like puzzle games. So I'm like, what the hell is it?
They also like published some real weird shit in the 3DS.
Oh, it could be Harmon Knight that you mentioned just before as well.
Could be.
Did that get a sequel? Harmon Knight?
No,
No.
it was a one
I
and done
wish.
thing. It's funny. Like the only game to ever get a sequel outside of Pokemon from Game Freak was Pocket Card Jockey, and that's debatable if the recent Apple TV version of it is an actual remake, a sequel, and not just like a remake of the original.
How many questions do we have left?
That's 9.
That's nine.
So
Is
we've
this
got
game
10
a rhythm
questions.
game?
So what was that?
Is this game a rhythm game?
Rhythm game? No. It's 10 down.
That also knocks out the Rhythm Heaven series.
What if it's the Louvre Guide?
That would be incredible.
That would be such a good pick.
A legitimately amazing pick if that is the case.
I actually had to cut that out of the last episode because I brought that up when we were talking about the DS, but that was a 3DS thing. So I just like chopped that out of the episode.
Oh man.
It's difficult, right? Because like most stuff on the 3DS was like part of a series. Unless it's Steel Diver, that's the only real thing that I can.
Does this game make use of Mii's?
I don't think so.
The deep cut question.
Well, because it knocks out things like Tomodachi Life, Miitopia. I know you'd probably
Yeah,
consider
but that
them
was
RPGs.
Yeah, that'll be RPGs for sure. Does this game contain submarines?
No.
Okay, I'll still do one.
Okay, well, I got nothing. I'm also trying to think of like things that Angelo would have played. Like, I don't think Angelo has played like Ever Oasis, for example. Maybe he has.
That's also
Yeah,
an
but
RPG though, right?
That's definitely an RPG.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of 3DS games in general, right?
I'm thinking of stuff like the Cooking Mama stuff, but that's all like in series. So like, it's not it.
The Sushi Striker, The Way of Sushido.
Did
Isn't it
we
a puzzle
establish
game?
whether or not this was a puzzle game?
Yeah, it's a puzzle game.
Don't know if you'd consider that a puzzle game because it's not. You're not matching anything. It's you just sort of.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of are. It's like an action puzzle game kind of thing.
I would laugh if this isn't on 3DS and we're just fucking owning ourselves for some reason, like we've missed something like really, really awful.
It's actually the alarm clock in the handheld Game & Watch from 2020.
Oh my god, I'm just trying to think of what else that even exists. Especially
I mean,
without
my-
sequels, like, or part of a series, like, because there's so much of the stuff Nintendo publishes is part of a series.
My mind did jump to Pilot Wings Resort, and then like, no, that's part of Pilot Wings, the series, not Wii Sports Resort.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 questions and a guess.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, we know it's not Picross because there's like 900 of those.
I was going to ask it right now. Have you mentioned this game?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So maybe it is something like Sushi Striker or Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers or whatever it was called.
Well, Dylan's Rolling Western is the first game. Dead Heat Breakers is the last
okay,
game.
it's a series.
That's a series.
God damn it.
Sushi
Maybe it
Striker
is
released on the
Louvre.
3DS and the Wii U.
Yeah, we didn't ask if it was exclusive. We just
No,
released
I'm
it
just
on
saying
3DS.
it released on 2 platforms. Okay, was this a game that people could buy?
What?
So I'm looking at the Louvre thing.
Oh, right.
Oh, do you mean like it was publicly available as
Yeah.
part of the system? Yes. It was. Can you just rephrase what you mean by the question?
Were you able to go onto the Nintendo eShop to purchase this game?
Okay. In that case, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But that could still mean Face Raiders because that was just built into the system.
Yeah.
Is this game built into the 3DS?
Yes.
You
Okay.
piece of shit.
Now, hold on, because it could still be one of the Street Pass Me Plaza games.
Oh, there's so many as well because they had the initial set and then they expanded it with like 48 other games.
All
right.
I mean,
but
it
we
has to
haven't-
be
we-
Face
no.
Raiders.
We haven't mentioned any of those other Street Pass games though.
That's
You have
true. We haven't.
4
It has to
questions
be
and a
Face
guess.
Raiders.
Oh, true.
Does,
yeah.
does this
only-
game make use of AR technology?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh my
Face
god.
Raiders.
I don't believe we just chanced onto this. That is wild. Yeah, I guess that's the only one we mentioned, right? We don't think we
Yeah.
mentioned any other Street Pass or built-in 3DS games.
Well, built-in 3DS games with AR, the only one is Space Raiders.
I find out that like Pilot Wings Resort was actually built into the console and has AR features.
It's a
like,
series.
So mad. But yeah, I think it has to be Face Raiders.
Yeah,
I'm happy to lock it in if you guys are.
Yeah, go for it, Michael.
Is this game Face Raiders for Nintendo 3DS?
Okay, that's your final question with 3 more questions to go, but
Yeah,
we'll go
do
with it. Released alongside the system when the system launched on 2011, developed by HAL Laboratory, published by Nintendo. It is a simulator/shooter according to Wikipedia, and apparently according to a Reddit post, once deleted, is automatically reinstalled with a firmware update. It is Face Raiders.
That's a wild pick. I don't know why you picked that. That's great.
I could like
It's-
as soon as one of you guys just mentioned it, I had to hold back such a laugh. I'm like, God damn it, these pricks actually guessed it just out of nowhere. Just literally plucked it out of the air.
I do not believe that we mentioned only one of those inbuilt games. It happened to be the exact one. And then we
Yep.
asked the meta question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kind of a Hail Mary throw like the moving out one the other week.
Totally.
Well, that's the thing. If we had mentioned any of it, if we just had, you know, well, there are those Street Pass games because there's so many of them. That would have just
Yeah.
literally opened up a can. We never would have cracked on our
Yeah.
own. So
Yeah.
I loved all those inbuilt games, especially when they expanded them. Like, they're so fun.
there were
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
at PAX last year with their 3DSs still doing Street Pass.
Yeah, rules. It
Yeah.
rules.
So
So good.
I mean, I think we all know my opinion on Street Pass. So, alrighty. Well, that about wraps up this very long episode of the Vookcast. Be sure to visit the site vooks.net for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. Keep up to date and follow the site on Blue Sky, which is at vooks.net, or jumping over to our Discord at bit.ly/VooksDiscord. You can find all of our social information, links to the stories covered in this episode, in the episode notes on whatever platform you're listening to or watching on. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next show.